Well, yeah, I'm going to a press conference here in a few minutes, and I don't know that everyone's going to be part of that. I suspect they will, or I hadn't heard that anyone wouldn't be. So I think everyone is, very much invested in, doing what we can together to advocate on behalf of all Canadians. That doesn't mean we don't have differences from coast to coast, and I think we can be thankful that 13 premiers and the Prime Minister are coming together in this room to, not only discuss those differences, but discuss the points where we need to work together. On Canada's behalf, and maybe that's something for each of us as individuals to remember as we go about our daily lives.
I think it's an important point, right? And I think that's why Canadians are tuned into this, because they are worried about what the potential impact of this is, whether you live in Saskatchewan or you live in Quebec or you live in Ontario. And I think going into this meeting, we heard different postures for certain, involving yourself, for example, and Premier Ford, about what happens with energy, which is such an important export to the United States in many different forms. But the prospect, for example, of blocking exports or adding a tax to you have been very opposed to. Has your position changed at all through this meeting?
No, and I think that's why it's important for us to keep things in the order that they have to occur. Whether it's a countervail or specific tariffs down the way, that is a conversation for a later date. Today we don't even have any tariffs on Canadian goods going into the U.S. And so today, and I would say ongoing, is one of the greatest powerful pieces that we've had is for us to engage as leaders throughout the U.S. You're seeing that happen at the subnational level. You're seeing, I think, that happen at the national level as well. We're going to have differences between provincial premiers. Goodness knows that, likely myself as the leader of the government in Saskatchewan has had, pretty significant differences, likely as large as any, with a number of policy decisions that have come out of the national government over the last 8 or 9 years. That doesn't mean that we don't work together where we can, in particular when it's in the best interest of all Canadians. And that time is now, and the job, and I would say the paramount most important job that we have to do as leaders, is to engage to ensure that everyone is aware of the advantage we have across North America when that integrated economy is growing across the 49th parallel. It works for Canadians, and it's beneficial for Canadians, and it's beneficial for Americans as well. And what's happening, and if the tariffs do come to fruition, it is going to be all North Americans that feel it, but largely it's going to be Americans that feel it the largest.
Do I take from what you just said, though, that the prospect of blocking energy or export taxes was not even discussed today?
Listen, I'm not going to go into all of the details of the room, but I would say it's a very open room with respect to what is discussed, what isn't discussed. And I would hope, and I think you'll see in the press conference, that there very much is an effort by everyone in the room to ensure that we are doing what we can do, that is representing Canadians in a very positive way, in attaining what works for us as being part of this continent of North America as well. I often speak about North American energy security, manufacturing security, and food security. That doesn't come about by imposing tariffs on one another. It comes about by working together and adding value to the products that we have.
But the logic of that, with all due respect, has failed to convince President Trump otherwise. But not even close. Instead, we presented a border plan, for example, to allay concerns when we thought this was about the border, and the rhetoric has just become even more inflamed. Do you think there's any possibility that the president doesn't levy tariffs in some form or another? Because he hasn't indicated that.
And he's not even president yet, as you say. He's president-elect. This is not, although this may be broader and larger, this is not for the first time that we have faced whether it be tariff or non-tariff challenges with not only the U.S. but other countries around the world. And we've been side by side. It is so much more pronounced, and it's larger and it's broader, and that's why our engagement and our effort and how we got through the other challenges that we had, which admittedly were smaller portions of the economy, was by ensuring that everyone realized the impact that those tariffs were having on not only the folks that are involved in that portion of our economy, but more broadly what it was having on our North American economy. At the end of the day, that is what is going to find us way through this, and that was what the discussion centered around today, is how can we ensure that we are doing our level best as 13 subnational leaders in representing Canada's interests, working with the federal government that is here or the federal government that may be coming in a number of months, to ensure that Canada is most certainly a big part of North American success.
And I certainly wouldn't take away from any of those efforts. And I remember when they worked the last time around. But again, I think there are a couple of things that offer a different scenario this time. The level of the threat, right? How much more pronounced it is, and the fact that Donald Trump doesn't have to worry about re-election. So even if those voices, which by the way haven't been saying anything this time around, do start to speak up more loudly, I fail to see how he's going to be necessarily convinced otherwise by just logic, which is why I think the question keeps being directed at you about how far we are willing to go as a country to respond if those tariffs are applied. And is it immovable from where you sit that there might be a scenario in which we have to do something with our energy exports? I mean, the federal government can compensate Saskatoonians for the degree to which they'd be out. There are programs that could be put in place to do that. Why not remain open to that possibility in the eventuality or in the possibility of this happening?
And so what you're asking everyone to do is show their hand before you enter the card game.
Well, you already have. With all due respect, Premier, you said no way, no how. Isn't that showing our hand to the incoming president and weakening our negotiating position?
And I would say that more broadly, when it comes to broad-based tariff wars, conflicts, escalating the number of items that tariffs are being applied to, whether that be broad-based tariffs, export tariffs, or import tariffs, is not conducive to the conversation and where we need to get. When we saw years ago the country of origin labeling dispute that we had in the U.S., more recently the steel dispute, which admittedly are much smaller than this, the only time we discussed tariffs was very specifically to impact certain lawmakers, certain decision makers in the U.S. Broad-based tariffs do not bode well for Canadians, and I would say largely they don't bode well for North Americans as well, and Americans are going to see that over the next while if these tariffs should come in. Well, then we'll keep meeting with our federal government and our counterparts, and we'll be making decisions in due course as we find our way. I would say the largest and most important initiative and decision that has been made by at least myself, I'll speak for to this point, is we need to engage. We need to ensure that we are talking to our American counterparts on how integrated our economy is, what that looks like when that integration falters or there's costs to it, because it's a very real impact. It's a very real impact to the things that we may take for granted. And I've talked to business folks just this past week that didn't realize to the degree Saskatchewan products were arriving in their factory. They realize it now, and we need to do that time and time and time again.
Just final question for you quickly before I let you go, Premier. Like I said, I give full credence to those efforts, and I don't think there's a Canadian who doesn't hope that they work. Have you drawn any hard lines, though, if they don't? And is it fair to say that after this meeting, maybe those lines that you were drawing going in are not as hard? How would you characterize it?
No, I would say it's fair to say that after this meeting, there is going to be even a more significant initiative when it comes to, reaching out and having those conversations that I had spoken about just how integrated and how important that North American economy is to be a non-tariff and for us to have that market access back and forth on the border. And I would say also, as we find our way through this conversation, we have inauguration coming up next week. We have, likely more back and forth that's going to happen between the various federal governments or the president and our prime minister. We're going to need to meet again as 13 premiers and the prime minister, the federal government, as I said, up to and whoever that might be in the future, to ensure that we are making those decisions in due course that may have to be made. But certainly, I think the most important thing now and going into this and for the foreseeable future is for us to engage with we should not forget, despite the comments, this is our largest trading partner and this is our largest ally, the United States of America, and we need to engage with that in mind.
Yeah, I don't think Canadians forget. Let's hope the Americans don't. Premier, I appreciate you making the time for the interview. Great to see you.